that she's in an area, because we did our school visits, that she's in an area where she doesn't have connectivity. Immaterial. Allow me to continue, and then I will just let me minimize that first screen. All right, there we go. Indeed, this computer is very slow this afternoon. Right, so I'm hoping that the view is a little bit better and the slides are a little bit clearer now. If there is a problem with sound, I would like to request that you sorry, that you leave the meeting and try to rejoin us. In terms of our presentation outline today, this is where we are at. As you know, I'm only going to spend a few minutes on some of the slides and rush over many of the others. What is going to be quite important is slides number 5, 6, 7, and 8. 5, 6, 7, and 8. Maybe a little bit time will be spent there. What I will also do is, ladies and gentlemen, on item number 11, the question and answer session, that is the time when I will allow you to unmute and ask any clarity-seeking questions or even make comments. But it's also a time where I will give you the link in the chat box or the chat section of this meeting, and then you will be allowed to please complete that form. It is a Google form, and then that will serve as a register, as well as some other feedback that is required. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to urge you to please remain with us for the duration. It should take no longer than an hour, but it also depends on how we interact. And I would like the session to be a little bit more interactive than previous sessions. So please feel free to raise up your hand and unmute at any time. I will try and see and recognize those hands. From the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome you on behalf of myself, Mr. Abdullah, and my partner, Ms. Nora Mutsepe, as well as our unit supervisor, Mr. Sikuni. A warm welcome to all of you, and thank you to you for availing yourselves and making the time and sacrificing to be here. We hope that this one is going to be a fruitful session. Not to waste too much of time, as we see the vision and mission statements being aired. This is part of following protocol, but also just to remind ourselves, to keep these in the back of our mind. The vision stating that every learner feels valued and inspired in our innovative education system, together with the mission where we are committed to provide functional and modern schools that enable quality teaching and learning, to protect and promote the right of every learner to quality, equitable, and relevant education. This next slide, colleagues, you'll see that it's been going around for a number of years now, where we have a matric slogan, hashtag 190 4580. The most important being 190 or 1/90, that being us in the Gauteng district office trying to reclaim the #1 position overall in terms of the matric and wanting a 90% overall pass rate. So by default, should I say, or jumping onto the back of that slogan, I thought having an NSTECH slogan is quite pertinent, where we're saying that hashtag 18550 is also what we would like to achieve, where for some reason ours is not the subject that is achieving the best results. So #1 is actually, we would like to request that we go out of our way to ensure that our learners do so well in natural sciences and technology over the next year or two that we become the best performing subject, and obviously with an overall pass rate of 85%, and we're hoping that should be 100%, but 85 is a very doable target. But also we would like all our learners to achieve in the last number at least 50% or above in terms of their overall results term on term, so that by the time they come to the 4th term, every learner is achieving over 50% in natural sciences. So that's something that we need to consider going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, as is customary, we normally, between myself and Mem Nora, will just jot down a few points in terms of what we find when we go to do our school visits. These are some of the things that are quite glaring when we look at some of the visits and our observations made during those visits. I think the most important is the first two bullets. So we're finding, and especially in grade 2, we did do food processing previously. And when I say previously, I mean at the beginning and before 2019. But since then, food processing has been completely removed from the RATP. Now, how do we know that people are not following the RATP? Is for that very reason, because there's been many schools, not just one or two colleagues. There have been many schools where myself and Mem Nora go to the school, and we find that teachers are just recycling their old lesson plans. And because they don't refer back to the RATP, they don't realize that we were not supposed to be doing food processing. And that's just the one topic that stands out. There are many other topics and many other sections that we should not be doing because those are not outlined in the RATP. Please, regular basis, whether it be the educator curriculum coverage tools, those give you guidance as to what you're supposed to be doing on a weekly basis. So, and I'm going to touch on this a lot more because it seems, after 2 or 3 years of saying this, it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. But colleagues, immaterial of that, we'll try and do it again, and then we'll see how best we can progress from there. So what is also very, very important is that we've been requesting and advising colleagues to use the provincial lesson plans because these are very precise and very detailed. But what we find is happening is that colleagues take the entire document that's like 300 pages long and they put it in various sleeves and they just file it. And then they don't do their own lesson plans. So they expect that whatever is written in the provincial lesson plans is the work that is supposed to be covered. Colleagues, remember again, those provincial lesson plans are pre-COVID-19. So they deal with all the topics that are available in the CAPS policy document and not in the RATP. So what happens is those activities do not correlate with what we find in the children's books. Excuse me. So I will speak to that at length a little bit later on. The other thing that we're also finding is in terms of the SBA tasks. We've had this discussion previously. Colleagues, we're still getting it wrong. We still don't have the correct balance of cognitive levels in terms of what is outlined on page 67 in the CAPS policy document. Remember, that has not changed. Even though we have circular 01 of 2021, circular 13 of 2020, all of those circulars are well in their place. However, the balance of cognitive levels of questioning has never ever changed. It remains 50% lower order, 35% middle order, and 15% higher order, of which when we do our school visits, we hardly ever find that to be the case. So colleagues, this is an appeal to you to please make sure you use rather the expectations as outlined in policy when you're drawing up both your SBA tasks as well as your SBA practical task and SBA written test. But I will talk to that a little bit later on. I've got an example for you as well. So if we move along to the next slide, Aisha, I see you've raised your hand. Kindly unmute, Aisha, and you're welcome to make your input.
Afternoon, sir. Sorry to trouble you. I just wanted to ask you a question based on the provincial lesson plans. Is it fine if we go through the provincial lesson plans and we sift it and we work with it in such a way where we we tailor it to our own designed activities? Is that okay?
Aisha, that is exactly what myself and Mem Nora have been preaching from the time we we sent out those provincial lesson plans. Colleagues will remember that's exactly what we're saying. So even before the COVID, those provincial lesson plans, they don't always fit in to your situation. Colleague, can I ask you to mute wherever you are? My apologies, colleagues. Colleague, please mute. Colleagues, please give me a second. I just want to see if I can mute this person. Okay, that seems to be a bit better. All right, as I was saying, my apologies, Aisha. In terms of what I was saying is, so those provincial lesson plans don't always fit into your unique situation as a teacher. So what you're doing is what you said is exactly right. Go through those plans, look at what your RATP is outlining as the next week's work. Once you know what your next week's work is, go back to the provincial lesson plans, check which of those activities lend themselves to those. You may find some of them lend themselves slightly differently, and that's where you're right. You have to amend them, change them. You can even add into the provincial lesson plans. Remember, they're a resource. So if you find another worksheet, whether it be on the internet or the textbooks that you're using, by all means, take that out, put it as part of your provincial lesson plan. But remember, those lesson plans are not dated. So you need to date them. You need to have specific headings, and those headings, and I'm going to talk to it a little bit later. And those headings and the dates that you have in your provincial lesson plans, if you decide to make them your own, then they have to correlate with what we find in the children's books. That is very, very important. So how we find synergy is we look at the RATP, we look at the topic that's outlined in the RATP, we go to your lesson plan, we look for the same topic, and then we go to the children's books and we need to find the very same topic in the learner's books. And that's what we call correlation or synergy. Are you answered, Aisha?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to continue. And as we continue, these are some of the other observations that we've made. All right. So what we're also asking is that a lot of schools have been given resources. Other schools have bought resources. Either way, whether you've bought it or you've been given through donations or sponsorships or through the district office or wherever it may be, it is important, colleagues, for us to use those resources. And the reason we need to use them is so that we can make our lessons, and I'm talking daily lessons, much more vibrant and much more real for the children. What we're finding is that our written activities, the few that we do have, are sometimes not of a good standard, and sometimes they are often so long because it seems as if you're trying to punish children by asking them to write a whole long two-page lesson, which shouldn't be that way, colleagues. Remember, natural sciences and technology, and I've been preaching this from the time I got to this position of subject advisor, is that we have to make it experience-based. It must be a practical subject or taught practically so that learners can see that science is an everyday occurrence. So it's important for us to do those kinds of things. I mean, I do know that time is always against us, but if we do proper planning and preparation, then at least, once or twice a week when you see them for a double period, try to go and a little bit beyond your comfort zone and try and do some kind of an experiment or some kind of practical task, because each of our activities, colleagues, does definitely lend itself to a practical activity in some way. So I don't want to belabor the point, but this is my appeal, or our appeal rather, should I say, is that make science fun. Because remember, this is the foundation, this is the gateway subject, because NSTECH becomes physics and chemistry and biology and zoology and a whole host of other subjects going forward. So if we don't plant or rather lay a good foundation now, those learners are going to hate science, and we are going to close the doors of opportunity to many of our children. So this is an appeal. What is very, very important also, colleagues, is the last two bullets. If we say we need an intervention or support or revision program and those type of things, even when we talk about our lesson planning on a weekly or daily basis, you are never going to know what to plan for and how to plan if you don't do analysis of results, which is your second last bullet. And there's I can safely say 95% of the schools that I visit, if not more, 95% of the schools that I visited uh, do not have analysis of results. And I'm not only talking about the term end or half yearly and you know end of year analysis of results. Colleagues, we need to do analysis of results on a weekly basis, if not, or rather should I say on a daily basis, if not a weekly basis. Because if you just give the children five questions every day, and you give them the corrections, but you don't ask and you don't check how many of them got all 5 questions wrong or 3 wrong or 2 wrong, how do you know how are you supposed to plan for the next lessons? It's very, very important, colleagues, that on a regular basis you do your analysis. Now, analysis of informal tasks is on a daily basis, and you don't have to be formal. You need to ask the children to pick up the hands. Guys, how many of you got all right? How many of you got 2 wrong, 3 wrong, whatever it may be? And from there, gauge as to what is your next step and your next activity going to be, which doesn't help you to move to the next topic, even though I know you caught for time and you're trying to adhere to the RATP. But if your children did not understand the introduction to energy and energy transfer, how are you going to talk to them about generating electricity, for that matter, as an example? So these are some of the things that we need to talk about. And obviously, at the end of the term or the beginning of the next term, if we give them a diagnostic test or baseline assessment to find out just how much they know. Because remember, the children that are in our classes now at the moment in grade 6 have had a very disruptive past 2 years. There are many, many topics that for whatever reason have not been covered both in grade 4 and grade 5. So there's a severe lack of, or there's a break in the knowledge that they bring to you. So it's important, especially at grade 6 level. And I know it may seem like an insurmountable task, but colleagues, you're doing all this excellent work a little bit extra, and you'll be focused and you'll be able to be that much better. So as I was telling you before, this is where our workshop or this training actually really starts, is that in terms of our content overview, we know that in grade 6, as in grade 4 and grade 5, is exactly what I was saying. You can see the progression. You can see the progression of energy and energy transfer. From grade 4, it goes from energy and energy transfer, and it comes up to electrical circuits. And it becomes a little bit more advanced as we go along. Right, colleagues? So if we don't know where the children are and what knowledge they bring with them, how is it possible for us to go forward? So in the same way, I just want to go through to the next slide, which is pertinent to grade 6. And we find ourselves here. So now when we look at this slide, and this comes straight from our educator reporting tool, again, colleagues, this is not anything that Abdullah pulled out of the air. What I have done is I've highlighted week 3. I've highlighted week 3. And if we look at week 3, if you have followed your ATP, then you should be more or less either doing circuit diagrams, or if not, you should have started electrical conductors and insulators if you haven't yet, which means if you haven't yet, you're going to be doing this in next week, talking about electrical conductors and insulators. Now, remember when I told you earlier on that I'm going to be spending a little bit more time on this here. Colleagues, look at the first bulletin that's highlighted in light blue. It says there, Introduction to Electrical Conductors and Insulators. That activity should take you no longer than a double period at best. But now, please understand, you'll see in the next slide what I'm talking about. When we look at the next bullet, it says there, test different materials in an electrical circuit to see if they are conductors and insulators, and record the results in a table. So now, colleagues, Look at what is written in yellow. Practical demonstration that can be done over a number of periods to show learners the different materials. And now I'd like to come back to what Aisha was asking. So what is our duty now? Now we need to go back to the provincial lesson plans and see indeed, are there any lesson plans that deal with the introduction to conductors and insulators? And more importantly, the next one, are there practical tasks that are available in the provincial lesson plan that speaks to this as a topic? That's the first thing. What is more important than that, colleagues, if you look at what is written in brackets, test different materials, brackets, such as metal paper clips, nails, wire, steel wool, coins, plastic, glass, ceramics, all of those things. Now, colleagues, I ask you a very simple question, and it's a redundant question you don't have to answer, or rhetorical question rather. Will you be able to test all of those materials in a electrical circuit to check if they're conductors or insulators within a single or a double period? My answer to you is very simple. Definitely not. So now this is how it relates. So if we look at the first part, the introduction to conductors and simulators, so this is how your lesson plan should work. You've seen it, introduction to conductors and insulators. That is in our RATP. I showed it to you in the educator reporting tool on the previous slide. And now this is how your lesson plan should look, where you've got the date which started on Monday, if you start, or if not, you're going to start next week. Either way, there's the date, there's the heading. But what is important is the textbook name and the page number, which is your content reference. Remember, each of us are doing a different textbook. And if you, or rather not doing, using a different textbook, but if you're not using a textbook, that's also in its place. But what you need to do is then give the children a handout or the activity sheet, but they need to know where they got that activity sheet from. Because you may have, as a teacher, you may have 3 or 4 textbooks, but the children only has one. So give them what we call the content or source reference. Once you have that, remember, in your lesson plan, if you look at the provincial lesson plan and you realize what is written there, written by Abdullah from Western Cape, doesn't fit in exactly to how you want this thing to go, you need to write down in as much detail as possible what is it that you are going to do to introduce conductors and insulators. You'll write down short notes for yourself as to what content will you give to the children, the vocabulary, even questions and answers. As important as, or rather questions, and as important as the questions and activity sheets, there must be a marking guideline and a memo for each of those questions. So that is the second synergy, or the second step in the correlation. When we go to the children's books, the same heading that we find in your lesson plan, within a day or two, because some of us have more than 1 or 2 classes or 3 classes that we see on staggered days, within a day or two, the date should be more or less the same. Obviously, the heading and the textbook content reference must also be the same. Again, look at the content and the questions. There is no reason on God's given earth why you should allow the children to rewrite what is in the textbooks. If you've given them the content or the source reference in terms of the page number and the questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, why is it necessary for them to rewrite the content and rewrite the questions? If you give them a little handout with a diagram or some content, and then you give them questions based on that diagram because it's not in the textbooks, then by all means that is allowed. And once they are completed with their colleagues, they must be doing corrections. This is talking to your analysis of results, but it also tells you as to whether the children have actualized the skills and the content that you've taught them. That is the first lesson that is done. Look at the next one now. So this is how I'm showing you how to break it up. Remember, look at what is highlighted in light blue and written in red. Those are some of the materials that was outlined in our RATP. So instead of doing it as one extra long drawn out activity that spans across 2 pages, the only thing that you're going to be doing differently is write the date, the heading in the textbook or the content reference every single time you do a different one. So the first time we're handling paper clips and steel wool to see if they are conductors and insulators. This next one, you're doing coins and plastics. This here, colleagues, increases the number of informal written tasks as per your curriculum coverage tool. But again, colleagues, I can't come to each one of you to show you how to teach this content. I also cannot, it's not within my ambit of experience or power to be able to give you the content. And you'll understand why I'm asking you this, because in the feedback form, I asked colleagues to give me direction as to what you would like to see happen for future training. I cannot teach you, colleagues, content. As a professional educator, whether you're doing NSTECH or social sciences or English or mathematics, it is your responsibility, your professional responsibility, to ensure that you become competent in all aspects of the content. Okay? In the same way, I cannot teach you, or I cannot rather instruct you or prescribe to you the way in which your lesson should progress. I can merely appeal to you to say, make it practical, let the children do the investigation or the practical task. But it is entirely up to you as to how you structure your lessons. As long as those lessons, however they may be structured, is explained in as much detail as possible as to what you're going to be doing and what the children are going to be doing. Colleagues, I'm going to pause there for just a minute so that I can take a little bit of a breather. In the meantime, if there's anybody that has any questions, you're welcome to unmute and ask me the question. Anyone? I think Mem Nora has joined us. Mem Nora, I recognize that you are late. Thank you, Mem Nora.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah.
All right, thank you so much, Mem Nora. Mem Nora, is there anything that you'd like to say to the colleagues?
Oh, yes, Mr. Abdullah.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, colleagues. I just want to take you back to the previous slides to say even in term 3, the educators are not using the resources that Mr. Abdullah emailed them. We appeal colleagues. We appeal colleagues that you must use the resources. They will help you a lot, and it will be easier on your side rather than developing questions, whereas there are question and answer in our resources that we gave you. Thank you, Mr. Abdullah.
Thanks, Ma'am Nora. Colleagues, I'm just trying to see whose mic is unmuted. And he's causing quite a disturbance. All right, I seem to have taken care of that one. Colleagues, thank you very much. Allow me to just check if I'm perfect. All right. So, colleagues, what we are going to do, colleagues, now is so based on what I've just spoken to you about now, in the absence of any other questions. So when we talk about testing in a circuit and checking for conductors and insulators, sorry, colleagues, is my presentation visible? Can you give me an indication, please?
Yes, Mr. Abdullah.
All right, perfect. So if we look at, for example, we've done electrical circuits for the children now, and we want to ask them questions. This comes back to our balance of cognitive levels in terms of the questions, right? Look at what it says there. It says the diagram below shows an incomplete electrical circuit that includes a battery, a bulb, 3 wires labeled A, B, and C. Now, this is a diagram that we've seen many times, and this is a diagram that I've seen it in children's books. So we gave them the diagram. But now look at the bullets that come below. Look at the questions and the way in which the questions are structured. Question number 1. Please don't. Okay, maybe I should just check. Name, and I'd like an answer to this question, please. Name one other component that can be attached to the circuit. Colleagues, anybody?
Switch.
Meneer, say that again, please.
A switch.
A switch. Excellent. Very good. Sorry, I can't recognize who was that, Meneer. So if we didn't, when we're answering, can I just request that you just say your name and your school or something? Oh, Mr. Singaram, thank you, from Impala. Thank you so much, Mr. Singaram. You are dead right. You are dead right. Now, I'd like to ask you an extension, or not just Mr. Singaram, but everybody. Let's go to the next one, and then we'll come back. Explain what should be done to this circuit for the light bulb to work or to light up. Anyone? Let's go. The switch should be closed. That's one answer. Anybody with a different answer?
Hello, sir. The wires A and B can be joined together.
Ma'am, yes. Can I just ask you to say your name, please?
It's Mrs. Naran.
Mrs. Naran, thank you. So which wires should be joined together, ma'am?
A and B.
Excellent. So A and B should be joined together, which does what?
It closes the circuit.
Thank you very much. Excellent answer. It closes the circuit. It completes the circuit. Now the light bulb will work. Very good. Let's look at the last question. If this was a complete circuit and the light bulb does not glow, in your opinion, give 3 possible reasons why this may happen. Anybody with one reason? Shandu from DOD, you're welcome to unmute. Shandu.
Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. It might happen that our circuit is broken.
Yes, possible that the circuit is broken. Good answer. Anybody else?
It's Mr. Singaram. The cell could be flat.
Very good, sir. The cell, and I like the way Meneer is saying it's a cell and it's not a battery as indicated there, isn't it so? Because remember, two or more cells make up a battery, but one is just a cell. So yes, the cell may not have enough energy or power. Yes, very good. Third one, anyone?
It's Mrs. Naran again. The bulb could be fused.
Thank you very much, Ms. Naran. The bulb could be fused. I don't want to explore too many other possibilities because there are some that we can still go through. But let me ask you this now by extension. From those 3 questions, who can identify which is the middle order question and tell me why they say it's a middle order question? Anyone?
There's a hand from Ikwezi Primary, Mr. Abdullah.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Nora. A colleague from Ikwezi, go ahead, please. Okay, so maybe there's a technical difficulty there. Let me ask anyone else. Anyone else?
From Mem Shandu.
Mem Shandu, go ahead from DOD.
Mr. Shandu.
Oh, Mr. My apologies, sir.
Sorry for that.
Go ahead, Mr. Shandu.
All right. I think for make a question here is the one with the third bullet. I can say the third bullet is a make question.
For middle order questions. Tell me why you say so, sir. Tell me why you say so.
It says give 3 reasons. Then I mean it says give 3 and in your options, and also you must give a possible reason for your answer. Why that particular thing might happen.
Can I ask another colleague to answer you in terms of that, Mr. Shandu? Colleagues, do we agree with Mr. Shandu? Is it bullet number 3 or question number 3 that is the middle order question? Anyone?
I don't agree, Mr. Abdullah, it's Mr. Singaram. I think that's a bit of a higher order. I think that bullet 3 is a higher order question because it requires a bit of thought process and manipulation in terms of your thought process. So I would go with the middle order as name one of the component. that's missing.
All right. So now let's answer your first question first. You are right in that when you ask the children for an opinion, you're asking them to infer. You're asking them to not only use the knowledge that they have, but they have to have an extension of that knowledge. So that's why when you're asking for them to elaborate, in your opinion, in those kinds of words, immaterial of whether you're asking them for possible reasons, but the way in which we structure our questions, and it's not always easy, colleagues. So Mr. Shandu is right in a way, but immediately when you ask learners to extrapolate or elaborate or give their opinion or along those lines, then automatically you're asking them for the higher level order type questions. All right. So if we look at it, and you can see it becomes a little bit difficult if you don't have enough practice. So my best advice to you is, colleagues, I've made these terms, as Ma'am Nora just referred to now. I've made those terms booklets available on my Google Drive. Please use those terms booklets because I got this question from that terms booklet. And that terms booklet is structured in such a way where there's a number of higher order questions. So if we look at the first question, and I'm answering now, Mr. Singaram, but colleagues, is the first question or the second question, which one is lower order? Which one is lower order?
The first question. The first question.
Your name, please, Mania?
My name is Mr. Mwikiti.
Mwikiti, how are you doing, sir?
Yes. I'm fine, and you, sir?
Lovely, thank you, sir. So yes, Mr. Mwikiti is right. And why do we say he's right? Because when we talk about name, what, when, who, why, and how, those are the nouns that are used to depict simple recalling questions. So if you're asking the children you've showed them what the components look like, all you're asking them is to identify. So that question, because the component is not given, it can border on middle order question as well. But look at the second question now. The second question is asking you to explain. So now, besides knowing how the circuit works, they now have to use that knowledge to now go further and explain what happens after the fact. So can you see that at every level, the first level is just simple remembering and writing down what they remember. The second one is using what they remember and try to make the next step of knowledge. So this is exactly what I was talking about in the second slide or the third slide when I was referring to the balance of cognitive levels. Colleagues, it's very, very important for us. So if you look at this would be one very simple activity, written activity that the children will have in their books, where you give them the diagram, you've already explained to them how electrical circuits work, what is a conductor, what is an insulator, blah, 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 all of those things. Now you're testing all of that knowledge in one simple diagram in a way that is cognitively balanced. And why do I say this? Because now you've given them at least one middle order and one higher order thought process question that they now need to really, you'll challenge them. So instead of just having one, you can ask them to, okay, let me ask you, colleagues, give me another question that is lower order that I can ask them concerning this diagram. Anyone? Colleagues, don't be shy, please. I don't want to single anybody out. I'd like to have volunteers. Colleague from Equasi again, thank you. You've raised your hand, I can see that. Go ahead. Unmute and make your contribution, sir. Ma'am? I think we're having a connection challenge there. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
I think you can ask them. I think you can ask them, what is the source of energy in that circuit?
Very good.
Name
Listen
the source
to the
of
question. Good. The first question was even perfect. What is the source of energy in the circuit? Perfect. Or the second question, name the energy source in the circuit. Perfect. Give me another lower order question. Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Name the outcome energy in this circuit.
Good, good. You can say identify the outcome energy of the light bulb, for example. Yes, or for the circuit. Very good. Munir, you had something to say? Anyone?
I was saying,
Yes,
name
sir.
the device in the circuit. Name the device in the circuit.
Good, 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 good. Name the
So what is
device in the circuit. Or you can say, what is the device in the circuit? So here you go. It's simple. Well, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's easier as and when you practice a little bit more. Can I then maybe ask you, colleagues, is there anybody that can give me a middle order question maybe?
There's one hand, Mr. Abdullah Emily Guest.
All right, go ahead, colleague. Go ahead, colleague. Emily. Unmute and go ahead.
And ma'am from Equiz.
Circuit 8.
Say again, please, ma'am.
Sorry.
Anyone? Okay, colleagues, I don't want to spend too much of time.
Okay.
Sorry, sir, you're breaking up. We can hardly hear you. Allow me to continue, colleagues. But this is something that you can think about. So, you know, for a simple diagram or for a very basic diagram like the one that is flighted here, you know, try and write down as many questions as possible. And it just takes preparation and it takes practice. So once you've written all the questions, see how you juggle those questions to give them at least one middle order or two middle order and one higher order questions every single day. This will ensure that our children start to become more aware of how the questions are structured, and also you challenge them. So you got little Johnny there in the corner who he looks like he's bored. He's actually not bored. He's just not being challenged. And I know that a lot of our children are struggling to read, but this is the very reason why we want to give them those middle order and higher order questions. Is because we need to motivate them and encourage them to start reading more so that they can understand better. And yes, it's going to be frustrating because a lot of the time our children don't read well, but you know, it's time now that we bite the bullet and ensure that we really try our level best to get them up there with the rest of the world. So, colleagues, this is some of our next slide takes us to the possible intervention strategies. So once you've done your planning and your preparation and your teaching and your informal activities, at some point you are going to have to give those children the SBA task. So whether it be the practical task as an investigation or an experiment, or whether it be the written test or whatever it may be, what is very important to note is that in NSTECH, according to our circular 01 of 2021-2022, is that we're only supposed to give the children one practical task and one test as a minimum, So our advice is give the children a little bit more chances at success. And why do I say this? Because if your children have never seen a test, or if they don't know how the test is going to be structured, they're going to be overwhelmed. So give them shorter tests before the end of term test. You know, even if you give them a weekly or bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, you give them a small Nyana test. Doesn't have to be for marks. You don't even have to mark it yourself. You can have peer marking. You can even have the children mark it themselves. It's all part of your informal activities. This is important for you to try to do. So this is part of your intervention strategies, colleagues. So now, say for example, you gave the children the very same diagram that I gave you. You gave them 5 questions. The child didn't do well in the 5 questions, all 5 questions. Now, before you give the corrections to the class, you tell the child, go and redo this exercise. You got all wrong. You start shouting. Is that going to benefit the child in any way whatsoever? Surely if he struggled to do it the first time around, he's going to struggle just as much the second time around. So if you look at bullet number 3 and number 4, it says additional informal activities. It doesn't say repeated informal activities. If you give the same worksheet or activity sheet to the same child who's been not getting it right over and over and over, it's just a repetition of more and the same. It's just going to frustrate the child. Whereas if you simplify it a little bit and you bring it down a level so that you give him additional chances at success, then you'll find that you build the confidence of the child. And yes, all of these, when we talk about extending deadlines and extra time, we do know, colleagues, that there is no such luxury in our daily teaching. And this is where, your planning and preparation is so important. So if Abdullah comes there and he couldn't get it right to do to build the circuit, for whatever reason, he had some challenge, he couldn't build the circuit, and you call him during break and you say, well, Abdullah, you sit here and you give him the stuff and you tell him, and then he tells you, but Meneer, I don't have the resources. Give him a pencil and a page and say, okay, draw me the stuff. So you have to be quite creative when it comes to those type of possible intervention strategies. And again, there, colleagues, Abdullah and Nora don't have all the answers simply because we are not in your unique specific situation. So, please, take advantage of the experience that you have in your HODs, your SMT, and even other colleagues that are available. I know on our chat this afternoon, I see colleagues that have been teaching for NSTECH for a number of years. And this is where it's also important for us to network and share ideas. Much like we were engaging earlier on, it's important for us to not wait for Abdullah and Motsepe to call up meetings. Teams and Zoom is available readily to anybody who's got Gmail. So please, colleagues, I would humbly request that you network with each other and see how best you can take your subject forward. So when we talk about school-based assessments, here we have our practical tasks, or rather, this is according to our circular 01 of 20, I think it's now 2022. If we look at the blue, done, the green, done, we are at yellow now. We are at yellow. Colleagues, I don't know how to stress this. Remember again, minimum marks is highlighted there on the top in blue and red. Red writing with a blue highlight. If we come down to where it says practical task number 5, practical task, again, if you've done your mini-PET in the first term or the second term, you're done. You don't have to do it. If you want to do it again, by all means, you're welcome. But I'm also going to tell you that we know that the mini-PET is very cumbersome. But because it is in our circular, we have to do it once a year. Do it at least once a year so that you know it's out of the way. If you haven't done it, this is the last term that you can do it. So please, if you haven't done it in term 1 or term 2, you have to do it now. Either way, the minimum mark is 15. Honestly, colleagues, even the written test, 20 marks for grade 6. Can you honestly tell ourselves that 20 is an effective, or rather 20 marks will give you a very good idea of where your children are? Surely you will agree with me not. So it is important for you when you're drawing up your test, remember that's a minimum mark. And if you have an admin person who's doing SSMs, that admin person can go onto SSMs and change the mark allocation for each of your tasks. So if you feel you want to give your task out of 50, your practical task out of 50, you are welcome to do that. They may not be able to change they are not able to change the weighting. They are not even be able to change the outcome and the calculation. But what they can change is the mark allocation. So you go to your SSM person and tell them that, or even go to your HOD because that's your direct line manager and tell them, HOD, and by the way, you have to send your paper to the HOD for moderation. So when you go there, show it, tell the HOD, because not all HODs are natural science and technology specialists. So tell them, say, according to the circular, we're supposed to have it out of 15. 15 is not nowhere near what I want. I've made it out of 45 or 50. But then go to the admin person and tell them, please change the mark on SSMs to be, instead of 15, needs to be 50. And again, true for the test, instead of it being 20, I want my test to be out of 60. So now you have a greater opportunity to test a variety of questions. So you got true and false, multiple choice, fill in the missing words, and those are all lower order questions. And then you have an opportunity to give them a case study where you can ask them things like elaborate, describe, in your opinion, what can you conclude, and those type of things. So now your test becomes, a true reflection of the learner's ability and your ability to transfer that knowledge. So colleagues, this is just that in passing, that it's minimum marks. You are at liberty to change those marks on your test and even on the SSMs. And if you can't, you see that the admin person is going to struggle to change the mark allocation, then it's not a big deal, because all you do is multiply your test to give it out of 60. So when you're reporting, you just divide by 3, and then you're well on your way, and then you get a mark out of 20. But I don't have to tell you this, because this is some of the things that you've already been doing through your daily work. All right, so in terms of what Mem Nora is saying, your innovations, I've sent you this Google Drive link before, and I will send it as part of the email again tomorrow morning. Colleagues, I'll put this, I'll even email this presentation to all of you, but I'll also put the presentation, as you see there, I'll put it as part of the Google Drive. So what is important, colleagues, is once you click on the Google Drive, that link there, it brings you to this kind of homepage where it says NSTECH Resources. So when you go to NSTECH Resources, the NSTECH Resources, when you click on this bar here, NSTECH Resources, then what happens is this opens up here, where you find the Siavula Teacher's Guides. So the Siavula Teacher's Guides is actually the Cecil Nzalo books. Colleagues, if you haven't used them, I promise you, those are excellent books, and it's aimed very nicely at the level of our learners. So look for it, and I think almost every single topic that is in our RATP is covered in those Nzalo books, and they have some nice activities. Please use them. So when you click on NSTECH Resources, it opens this up, and below you'll find there's a number of resources. And if you click, for example, on grade 4, then in grade 4, this is what you'll find, and you'll find other information at the bottom. So if you click on grade 5, you'll find the same thing. Click on grade 6, you'll find the same thing. So we've tried to make this accessible to everybody. Colleagues, please try your best to try and make use of that, because it definitely will make your life a little bit easier. So if you use the resources that are available in the Google Drive together with your provincial lesson plans, so there's no real can I say planning that you have to really sit and brainstorm from the beginning to the end, because you'll have certain resources that will allow you leeway to just manipulate and chop and change and amend to suit your unique needs in the classroom. Colleagues, we're almost done. Another 5 or so minutes. I just want to bring this to your attention. As I was talking to you earlier about our reading levels of our children. Yes, we are struggling, and myself and Mem Nora, I've been asked to report against these deliverables here. So daily 5-minute spelling test is always not possible. I do understand that, but at the very least, give them a weekly spelling test. So what you can do is, at the beginning of every day, for example, put the vocabulary on the board, 3 or 4 new words that you're going to teach them for that lesson, and tell them, guys, you need to learn how to spell, pronounce, and read these words. Come Friday or come Thursday, I'm going to give you a spelling test. So by the time Thursday or Friday comes, you'll have at least 8 to 10 words that are available. Give them a spelling test. Again, you don't have to mark it. You can have those sight words on your class in a cardboard. So you give them the word, and as they read completed writing, just put all those words on the board as vocabulary, and then they mark it and then do the corrections for themselves. Again, yeah, it's important to find out how many children get it right or wrong, but you don't want to also waste too much time, because we do know that our content is a little bit, or our RATP is a little bit content heavy. But again, this can only come about with good, effective lesson planning and preparation. Again, our classrooms need to be print rich. You need to have charts and information, and that word wall or vocabulary wall, whichever you like. Also important is give the children an opportunity to read. That same little Johnny that's bored in the corner and that kind of disrupts your classroom. Those are the very learners that you can say, hey, I want you to read. So sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable, especially if they're struggling to read, but you'll find children really in your classes who would like to read. So give them that opportunity, and don't always pick on one, or don't always select one. Just, try and go along all the groups and give children a chance to read the content or the words or instructions or those type of things. We've spoken already on the weekly informal tests. You can have weekly, bi-weekly. It just gives them a little bit more practice to see how the questions are structured and what is expected as and when you give them their termly written test. All right, colleagues. So now I'll give you just a few minutes while Mem Nora is going to recognize hands. I'm going to try and or rather try and put the link of our register in our chat box. Let me just check if that's possible. Colleagues, I was BBT. I'm born before technology.